In our headlines on this Friday, March 27th, here in South Korea, US President Donald Trump extends again his ultimatum to strike Iran's energy infrastructure by 10 days to April 6th, citing advances in talks to end the military confrontation in the Middle East. Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun is in France for the extended Group of 7 ministerial meeting to address the unrest in the Middle East and its impact on global shipping traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. And President Lee Jae-myung honors the 55 South Korean service members who lost their lives during military clashes with North Korea while defending the West Sea maritime border. April 6th. Now, this is the new deadline that Iran has been offered by the US to open the Strait of Hormuz to global shipping traffic or face the destruction of its energy infrastructure. Our Kim Do-yeon starts us off.
The United States has given Iran another reprieve, halting threatened military strikes on its energy infrastructure to allow room for diplomacy. U.S. President Donald Trump announced a 10-day pause on the destruction of Iranian energy plants, pushing an existing deadline from March 27 to April 6. Taking to Truth Social on Thursday, the president noted the extension was requested by the Iranian government and that ongoing talks are progressing well. However, the rhetoric from Washington remains forceful. During a cabinet meeting, President Trump asserted that Iran's severely degraded military capabilities have left Tehran desperate for an agreement. He also issued a stern economic warning, stating that the U.S. seizing and gaining control of Iranian oil reserves remains a viable option if negotiations fail.
Who wouldn't negotiate? They are begging to make a deal. We'll see if we can make the right deal. And if they make the right deal, then the strait will open up. Hormuz Strait will open up.
The potential reopening of Strait of Hormuz is closely tied to the latest major escalation by Israeli forces. On Thursday, Israel announced it had killed the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy.
This man has a great deal of blood on his hands, and in addition, he was the one who led the closure of the Strait of Hormuz.
This key military figure was directly responsible for overseeing the ongoing blockade of the critical maritime transit route. Netanyahu also claimed the killing was a coordinated strategic effort with the United States to achieve broader wartime objectives. The combination of a tactical pause from Washington and a strategic strike from Israel leaves global energy markets and international supply chains highly volatile. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
South Korea is reportedly exploring prospects of partaking in the G7 summit in France this June, following a formal invitation from the host. Now, this comes as Foreign Minister Cho Hyun is currently in France for the G7 ministerial meeting. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
Seoul is reviewing whether to attend the Group of 7 Leaders Summit in June, after France invited the leaders of South Korea, India, Brazil and Kenya. The Blue House said Friday that Seoul is currently considering whether to attend, taking into account diplomatic schedules as well as domestic and international circumstances. The Elysée had extended the invitation on Thursday with the intention of expanding support among key markets to address global economic imbalances. The announcement comes as Middle East tensions and energy risks are expected to feature prominently in discussions among advanced economies. Ahead of the Leaders Summit, Minister Cho Hyun is attending the G7 Foreign Ministers meeting in France, holding a series of bilateral talks with his counterparts. According to Seoul's Foreign Ministry, Cho met with the US Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs Alison Hooker on Thursday. He expressed concern over the situation in the Strait of Hormuz and stressed that de-escalation is urgently needed to guarantee safe navigation for all vessels, including Korean ships, and to stabilize global energy and logistics supply chains. The ministry said Hooker welcomed South Korea's participation in international efforts supporting safe and free navigation, including backing the joint statement of 30-plus countries. The two sides also reviewed progress on commitments reached last year by their heads of state in a so-called joint fact sheet, including the recent passage of South Korea's special law tied to its US investment. They agreed to move quickly on follow-up working-level consultations on the security elements of the fact sheet, as talks have been stalled for weeks. Cho also held successive meetings with the foreign ministers of Brazil, Canada, France and India, as well as senior officials from the European Union and Germany. Topics discussed range from bilateral cooperation, energy security, and inevitably the Middle East situation. In talks with French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot, the two discussed preparations for President Macron's upcoming visit to South Korea. The Foreign Ministry says Minister Cho could meet his US counterpart, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who's in Paris on Friday. The two could also hold a trilateral with their Japanese counterpart. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And here in South Korea, an earlier cap on fuel prices at the pumps has been raised higher to better reflect the relentless rise in energy costs worldwide. The government here is also restricting the exports of naphtha for the next 5 months. Our Jinhae has more.
South Korea's second fuel price cap took effect at midnight on Friday, raising limits by more than 200 won, or 15 cents per liter in just 2 weeks, as global oil prices continue to climb. Under the new cap, gasoline is set at 1,934 won, or about $1.43 per liter, while diesel is capped at 1,923 won, roughly $1.42. Kerosene is priced at 1,531, or around $1.13 per liter. Even with the measure, retail fuel prices are expected to enter the 2001 range, or about $1.48 per liter, as pump prices had already been trending higher. Consumers say the burden is growing, with monthly fuel costs rising significantly.
I used to spend about 200,000 to 250,000 a month on gas, but now it's gone up to over 300,000 won, so it definitely feels like a much heavier burden.
The government says the adjustment reflects rising global oil prices while expanding tax relief to ease the impact. Fuel tax cuts have been widened to 15% for gasoline from the previous 7% and 25% for diesel from the previous 10%, lowering prices by up to 6 cents per liter, with a larger reduction for diesel due to its role in industry and logistics. Finance Minister Koo Yoon-chul says the goal is to balance market pressures with consumer relief. The new cap will remain in place through April 9th, with officials warning prices could continue to rise in the coming days. Authorities also say additional tax cuts remain possible if global oil prices climb further. Meanwhile, South Korea is moving to stabilize supply. The government will begin restricting the export of naphtha, used for manufacturing plastics and chemicals, for 5 months starting Friday, as shortages deepen amid the Middle East conflict. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Resources say the move follows supply disruptions after strikes on Iran, with South Korea importing about half of its naphtha through the Strait of Hormuz, a key route now effectively closed. To support domestic industries, authorities plan to expand low-interest loans and may raise import credit limits. About 11% of domestically produced naphtha exports will be redirected to local buyers. Officials say the measures are aimed at containing both rising consumer costs and growing supply risks as global energy uncertainty continues. Jinhae, Arirang News.
Also, on the local front, President Lee Jae-myung marked the 11th West Sea Defense Day with a renewed pledge to build peace on the Korean Peninsula. Our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
Remembering fallen heroes and ending the era of confrontation on the Korean Peninsula. Those were key messages from President Lee Jae-myung as he observed the 11th West Sea Defense Day commemoration on Friday at Daejeon National Cemetery.
고귀한 희생을 마다하지 않았던 55인의 서해 수호 영웅들에게 머리 숙여 깊은 경의와 추모의 마음을 전합니다.
He vowed to strengthen policies for veterans and their families, saying there should be a special compensation for those who made special sacrifices.
그렇기에 오늘날 우리가 누리는 자유와 평화, 번영의 그 밑바탕에 공동체를 위한 특별한 희생이 자리 잡고 있음을 결코 잊어서는 안 됩니다.
The government plans to bolster monthly subsidies for the spouses of war veterans and expand hospital service for veterans. The South Korean president revisited his will to end the history of confrontation in the West Sea and bring peace on the peninsula, saying what's more important than achieving victory through a fight is achieving peace where there is no need to fight.
강력한 국방력으로 우리 국민과 대한민국의 영토를 흔들림 없이 지켜내는 동시에 전쟁과 적대의 걱정이 없는 평화로운 한반도를 만드는 일이야말로 서해 수호 영웅들이 우리에게 남긴 시대적 사명이라 믿습니다.
Earlier, President Lee and First Lady Kim Hae-kyung visited the Cemetery of the Fallen Heroes. Later in the day, the commander-in-chief presided over a meeting with key military officers. He asked them to maintain airtight defense readiness based on the South Korea-U.S. alliance and stressed the importance of defense capabilities of its own to deal with the complicated security environment. The president said the transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul will be swiftly carried out. The West Sea Defense Day falls on the fourth Friday of March. The day honors fallen troops who died in the 2002 inter-Korean naval battle, North Korea's torpedo attack on a South Korean Navy ship in 2010, and its shelling of Yeonpyeongdo Island the same year. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, North Korea's Kim Jong-un and his Belarusian counterpart Alexander Lukashenko held a summit on Thursday in Pyongyang after a grand welcome ceremony on Wednesday. According to the regime state media on this Friday, Kim shared support for and solidarity with Lukashenko's policy of defending sovereign rights on the international stage. The two leaders also signed a treaty on friendship and a number of agreements on agriculture, education, and public health. Precisely a year ago this month, South Korea witnessed the start of wildfires that went on record as some of the most severe, with people's lives and livelihoods upended. And since then, for survivors, the road to recovery has not only been physically demanding, but also emotionally taxing as they strive to restore a sense of normalcy. Our An Sung-jin, that is, files this report.
Bare tree stumps cover the desolate hillside. The frame of a collapsed greenhouse stands nearby with old farming equipment still scattered inside. It has been a year since 75-year-old Ye Gong-hae lost everything in one of the country's worst wildfires. His life, once rooted in this land for more than 20 years, remains in limbo.
I've built everything in this area from scratch, starting from electricity to these roads. I still remember how fast the fire was coming towards me on the day. My youth burned away. I just want proper support before I die to compensate all my loss.
For survivors like him, the government provided temporary housing. About 20 households live in the same complex. But that housing comes with a 2-year limit, and rebuilding a stable life and returning to what once was feels uncertain at best. The wildfire, which began on March 22, 2025 in the Yeongnam region, quickly spread, burning nearly 100,000 hectares of land. It killed more than 30 people and displaced thousands, marking it as one of the most devastating disasters of its kind. This coastal village in Yeongdeok-gun County stood here for around 300 years and was once home to nearly 90 households. But after nearly 80 of them burned down, all that remains is an empty lot and a 33-square-meter temporary shelter where the remaining residents are struggling to get by. In an effort to help residents cope, Yeongdeok-gun County recently held a memorial event at the community sports center where residents had once taken refuge. Survivors, volunteers, and local officials gathered together not only to remember, but to look ahead.
We've gone through so much to come here to establish the special law and its enforcement decree, but they are not being implemented in the way the victims want. We intend to present our case and demand a fair and proper compensation.
Lawmakers continue to emphasize legislative efforts aimed at recovery and prevention. One lawmaker in a dedicated parliamentary committee focused on recovery, whose own land was affected, highlighted the need for more than short-term aid.
Because this happened in a rural area, we need special measures for rebuilding. These elderly farmers, fishermen, and forestry workers have lost their livelihoods, and the key question is how they can sustain themselves here again.
Wildfires may last only moments, but their impact stretches across years. Without support and understanding, people like Gunhangjae face an uncertain path to recovery. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
And in other news, convenience stores here in South Korea are adopting roles beyond those of simple retail to compete against e-commerce. Accordingly, some stores seek to enhance the experience of foreign travelers, while others cater to the needs of local runners. Our Kim Jun-hong files this report.
A library of ramen fills a convenience store in Myeongdong. At the heart of a bustling tourist spot, this K-ramen specialty store showcases a wall nearly 3 meters tall, lined with around 170 different varieties.
Since we get a lot of foreign visitors, we've organized the ramyeon by spice levels. We also placed popular items like banana milk up front for easier access.
Customers choose their ramen and move to a cooking station, adding sides like kimchi and kimbap to recreate a local way of enjoying the dish.
I mean, it's kind of the variety of ramyun, how you can see here, and like the process how to make it with the machine. It's very easy, so it's very nice.
I tried something where the Netflix show was, the cook was selected, so it was very good but very spicy as well.
Elsewhere in the same building, the lower floor showcases souvenirs, K-beauty items, and K-pop merchandise, attracting anyone looking to experience Korean culture. Such trend comes as South Korea's convenience store industry saw the number of stores decline for the first time last year after nearly 4 decades of steady growth. Having long relied on expanding store networks to boost buying power, the model is now showing its limits as the market saturates. In response, the industry is now turning to new strategies.
It's not just foreign tourists that are being targeted. On the bank of the Han River here in Yeouido, this store attracts local runners, offering everything they need before and after a run.
With running as a hobby on the rise, this store offers lockers for storing belongings, along with a curated section dedicated to running gear. Changing rooms and a powder room add to runners' convenience, while a photo zone completes the experience.
I run 4 times a week. I came here once and liked it, so I came back. There are more energy gels and drinks than in other stores here. I also find the changing room really convenient.
Such specialized stores have emerged in part due to the growing dominance of online retail.
E-commerce has become central to Korea's retail landscape. Convenience stores, once defined by accessibility, now need to evolve beyond that. Strategies that focus on analyzing each local market and providing products and services tailored to local demand are becoming increasingly important.
Amid changing retail trends, convenience stores are redefining themselves as spaces designed for experiences. Kim Jun-hong, Arirang News.
And on the K-pop front, BTS's new album Arirang marked a new milestone within 3 days of its release by surpassing 4 million sales. That being said, our culture correspondent Park Eun-woo reached out to one of its producers for his thoughts on the milestone and more.
Behind BTS's long-awaited return lies a year-long global collaboration project. The members spent the past year refining the project, including holding a song camp in LA for months, enabling collaborations with global songwriters. That's so much of the album's credits go to overseas producers, featuring renowned names such as multiple Grammy-winning producer Diplo, alongside emerging talents like James Essien.
So, how do you feel about this massive global response going on right now for your latest tracks, and did you expect this to happen?
This is actually crazy. I've never done anything like this. I've made loads of songs, but I've never been a part of anything that's this kind of it's like a phenomenon. So
Essien, who contributed 3 songs to the 14-track album, including lead single Swim, says it was a challenge to finalize the song.
It's how do we do something that everybody that's come up with them from the beginning of their journey is going to still relate to. I was aiming to try and get swim, but I made so many different versions of that same type of idea. I wanted to do something like as a writer that was like, would catch people slightly off guard, you know.
STN says he didn't expect Swim to become the lead single, but the process showed him how K-pop continues to push boundaries.
A lot of like mainstream pop music, there's more lyrical restrictions, there's more musical restrictions. K-pop is quite free, and the songs, you know, they have scene changes, they have melodic changes, and fascinating to me as a songwriter, as somebody who came up making a lot of music that's quite, you know, form and function. So like,
one culture critic says this kind of collaboration remains essential.
Collaboration and localization are important, like the case of Rosé's work with Bruno Mars and groups like Cat's Eye. At the same time, incorporating uniquely Korean elements, such as the traditional folk song Arirang or the sound of the sacred bell of great King Songdok, remains key to preserving its identity.
The critic added that this balance between global appeal and local identity will be key to sustaining K-pop's momentum. 박건우, Arirang News.
And up next, the sights of spring are on full display in the southern part of South Korea as cherry blossoms transform the region there into a beautiful canvas of pink. For more on this, I have my colleague Cho Young-eun standing by live. Young-eun, it's lovely to have you on. Do start by telling us exactly where you are.
Thank you. Yes, I am in Jinhae district of Changwon City in Gyeongsangnam-do province, very south of the country. As Korea's largest and one of the oldest cherry blossom festivals, the Jinhae Gunhangjae Festival marks its 64th year, and the city is alive with colors and energy of spring. We are less than an hour away from the official opening ceremony, and the atmosphere is already buzzing with excitement. Even though it's only the first day, visitors have been pouring in since early afternoon, gathering along the streets and under rows of cherry blossom trees that are just beginning to bloom. The city is home to more than 360,000 cherry blossom trees, creating a breathtaking sweep of pink and white. Beyond the beautiful cherry blossom, this year's festival offers a diverse lineup of events, with the city expecting around 3.5 million visitors. We spoke to some visitors earlier about what brought them here today. Let's take a listen.
And I have lovely Korean students, so they told me to come to Korea. And when I got here, one of my coworkers told me about this festival.
I took a day off and came here with my girlfriend to check out the famous Jinhae Festival. We traveled all the way from Suncheon.
The weather was better than expected, and it was great to see so many cherry blossoms in bloom. I'm planning to take photos with my family at night and visit a few places with my dog.
Right, and Young-eun, for those of us here in Seoul as well as across the nation who aren't able to be where you are, when can we expect to enjoy this year's cherry blossoms?
Right, Sunny, the season begins in southern cities and blossoms are expected to spread across the country by next week. According to the Korea Meteorological Administration, the cherry blossoms this year are blooming earlier than usual by around 2 to 7 days. Here in Jinhae, peak bloom is expected to arrive slightly earlier than last year, meaning visitors in coming days will likely see their blossoms at their most vibrant. Last year, the flowers reached full bloom in Jinhae and nearby Hadong on March 29, before peaking in Seoul's Yeouido on April 3rd. This year, peak bloom in Seoul is forecast around April 10, giving people across the country a chance to enjoy the season. Meanwhile, the Cherry Blossom Music Festival here in Jinhae, now in its second year, will run from April 3rd to 5th, adding to the festive atmosphere. That's all I have for now. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Young-eun, thank you for that report.
As spring continues to settle in, temperatures will stay above seasonal norms for now. Daytime highs will reach around 20 degrees Celsius, but with large day-to-night temperature differences, so please take care. With less rainfall this spring and stagnant air, fine dust is continuing to build up. Air quality will be at bad levels across most of the country. In the south of the country, levels may briefly spike to very bad in the morning. So if you're heading out this weekend, don't forget to wear a face mask. Looking ahead, showers will begin early Monday morning in the southwest, western Gyeongsangnam-do province and Jeju-do Island, before spreading to other parts. Tomorrow, Seoul will start the day at 6 degrees Celsius, Chuncheon at 3 degrees, Busan at 11 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 21 degrees, Chuncheon also at 21 degrees, Jeju at 21 degrees as well. We'll continue to see clear skies and large temperature swings through the weekend, and rain is expected nationwide from Monday into early Tuesday. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.